Well, good morning. It's always good to be back here in my annual pilgrimage to the pulpit. If you don't know who I am, I know you. 7 years ago, we became friends, even though I've been associated with this church for over 40 years off and on. I think most of you know that I spent 10 years in Huntington Beach, California. That was from 78 to 88. And lots of fond memories of our youth ministries doing stuff together back in the day. Now, let's just get one thing out of the way, because where are the Angel fans? All right, most of you are. Where are the Dodger haters? Oh, see, where are the Dodger? Okay, Angel fans, one more time. Dodger fans, a smaller contingent. How about the Dodger haters then? Much larger group. Let's just get this out of the way. Not only do I have the Dodger shirt, I have the Dodger shoes, and I have the Dodger socks. All right, just saying. And please don't hold that against me. I have been a Dodger fan for decades. I was 9 years old when our Sunday school class went to Dodger Stadium. A young pitcher by the name of Sandy Koufax pitched a perfect game. My Sunday school teacher was a landscape architect. He scored the game in his mechanical pencil and gave me the program. So I have that, and finally, years later, I bought a Koufax signed baseball. It did cause me to have to mortgage my house to pay for it, but all is good because it's gone up in value. All right. Hey, we're going to talk today about Sabbath, a rhythm of rest. If you don't have this program, study guide, you will be lost. And there's some stuff in there that I'll be referring to. If you need one, would you raise your hand? And for those of you online, you could email the church office and probably get your PDF of the notes. If you're really nice to me, I'll just send you the whole transcript. How's that? By the way, I was early today. What in the world? I thought for sure the service was at 9 a.m. I was here at 8:20. I'm going, wow, they heard I was coming. Nobody's here. Hurt my feelings. And so I'm in here at 8:30. The band's just taking their time. They're like going to like 5 minutes to 9. I'm like, wow, I guess they're quick. Can I just see the PowerPoint? So Corey just meanders back and, oh yeah, I should put it in. Thank you, Corey. And I'm like, it's 2 minutes to 9. I'm going, aren't we live streaming in 2 minutes? He looks at me and goes, the service is at 10:30. You're kidding me. All right. So I am well rested. I've napped in my car. I've had breakfast. Life is good. And so I'm so glad. Speaking of naps, I just spent a week at Forest Home with 5 grandkids. Do not equate Sabbath rest with Forest Home, family camp, and grandkids. Those words don't work in the same sentence, but I did take many naps. You know, in fact, I'm a great grandpa. Because, you know, when Haven she's literally, she has to rest, I said, yeah, I'll take one for the team. I'll stay back and watch her as we nap together. But we're going to look at this idea of Sabbath. I think on the first slide, you see this party on. We did an exhaustive study at our church. Oh, speaking of that, you go, you're still working? I thought you retired. Pretty much flunked retirement in 2021. Since then, I think you might have known I was a teaching pastor for a church waiting for their next pastor. And then in September, one of my best friends says, hey, can you help me with this church in Redondo Beach? So I am literally doing the job every pastor is accused of having. Don't you guys just work on Sundays only? That's the only time? Yep, that's all I do. I work on Sundays. Every Sunday? Nope, 2 or 3 Sundays a month. So when I'm not there, I'm preaching somewhere. And so it's a great pleasure to be here with you. And so we did this series studying the festivals of Leviticus 23. Never in my 45 years of ministry had ever seen a pastor say, let's preach through Leviticus chapter 23 for 5 weeks. I said, you got to be kidding me. This is going to be a snooze fest. And it wasn't. It was so much fun. And I got to do the Sabbath one. So I've kind of adapted this. And we're really going to look at this idea of a rhythm of rest. It's a concept that I believe that Israel had as part of his life, their life rhythm. We think of the word sabbatical, and Pastor Jared had one last summer. But do we need to practice Sabbath today in the New Testament, in the Christian, quote, church? I think inquiring minds want to know. So we're going to see what the Bible actually has to say, and I think you might be surprised. So Alice Walker, who wrote the movie To the Color Purple, said, anybody can observe the Sabbath, but making it holy surely takes the rest of the week. And then, of course, D.L. Moody, show me a nation that has given up the Sabbath, and I will show you a nation that has got the seed of decay. So here's the first question. Is the Sabbath for today? Because we say, well, that's an Old Testament deal. All the other 10 commandments, 9 out of 10, are restated in the New Testament except for the Sabbath. I'll answer that question in a moment. Let's see what Leviticus 23:3 says. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the solemn rest, a holy convocation. You shall do some work, a little work. Work if it doesn't feel like work. No, it says no work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. And if it was today, it is a Sabbath from all of your devices, if you know what I mean, that maybe we get addicted to. So here's the principle. I think this is the overriding principle. Sabbath is a blessing, not a burden. Sabbath is a blessing, not a burden. Now, it's not commanded in the New Testament, and that's an important distinction because sometimes we say, there are things in the Bible that says, thus saith the Lord. This is God's will concerning you, your sexual purity, and other passages like that. This is not commanded. It's a wisdom issue. Like many decisions in life, you have decisions to make, right? James says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all men generously and without reproach. And so I think this is a wisdom. Not that you have to do it, but maybe it might be a good thing. Maybe it's something that could help you, whether it's mandated or not. And people say, well, why didn't they restate it? Because I don't think in Jesus' day there was ever a mindset that would have thought, well, we don't have to restate this. This just makes good common sense. It's a good thing. What problem with the Sabbath is what the Pharisees did to the Sabbath, which we'll look at in a moment, and we'll see 4 principles that Jesus gives us regarding Sabbath. So, Sabbath is a blessing, not a burden, and Kevin DeYoung says this, Sabbath is not meant as a day of gloom, but a day of gladness. And so we're going to relish that. By the way, this is about grace, not guilt. Not what you're wanting to, feeling bad about what, one more thing I'm not doing. We're not going there this morning. That's not what this is about. So, why is it helpful to you? From a wisdom standpoint, I think there are 4 benefits to practicing this rhythm of rest or Sabbath in your life. First of all, there's a physical deal. It encourages this rest because it renews your body. By the way, Sabbath doesn't necessarily equal sleep. But some of you just need to sleep, and we'll look at that in just a moment. By the way, you need sleep, but probably not in the next 30 minutes, but after that, it's free game, right? Free game. Emotionally, it allows peace to have a place in our busy lives. Without guilt or shame, how many of you just say, yeah, my life is pretty full, and I'm a fairly busy person? I am. Yeah, there's nothing wrong. How many of you are just complete, total slackers? Nobody wants to admit that because back in the day we used to say, yeah, the retired guys, yep, I'm owning it. I play golf once a week. I take 4 naps. I'm good. See, I think a lot of times when we think about Sabbath, this emotional space that needs to just create lack of anything, just there's so much competing for our attention. Every morning for the last 6 mornings up at Forest Home, I was up early, because the family next to us had 4 kids under the age of 5. You know what that's like. So wake-up call, did not need an alarm. They helped us with that. Those walls are thin. 6 a.m., I'm up, which I wanted to be up. And so I go spend an hour before breakfast just sitting out on this patio with a little stream. And it was so great. And just spent time with Jesus every morning. And nobody else up except this one kid who seemed to be an orphan because he was always there waiting for the coffee. Like, you're 9, dude. Like, go back to bed. But he was up. Thirdly, spiritually, it reminds us that God modeled it in creation. We're going to take a look at that. Why did God rest? Did he need rest? We'll see. He didn't need it, but there's a reason why he took it. And then fourth, practically, it protects us from the relentless tyranny of the urgent. Now, if we're honest, someone in this room right now has a to-do list. It's on their phone now. It's a little more discreet. Or it's on a little notepad, but so you're not distracted. You know there are things that come to your mind in the middle of a message and you jot them down. Now, I do that nearly every week because I don't want to be I want to focus on the sermon. But does anybody always have a to-do list? It's always spinning somewhere in your brain, but is it just me? All right, now raise them high. There's nothing wrong with that. And so you find ways to cope with this tyranny of the urgent. And when you take Sabbath rest, and I'm not even saying you do it every week. I'm just saying, is there a rhythm in your life where you shut down for a period of time so that you can hear from God, rest your soul, and not be distracted by the tyranny of the urgent? That's what this is about today. All right. So what was the practice in the Old Testament? Look at Exodus 20, verses 8 through 11. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall do no work. Now there are a lot of people who are not supposed to be working that day. You, or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant. For us, that's our downstairs butler, but your male servant, your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. I always thought that was kind of peculiar. Because obviously he's God, he doesn't need to rest, so let's look at that. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. All right, so what's the meaning? On the screen there, a law intended to balance work and rest. And the word Sabbath literally means to come to an end, to cease, or to stop. So sometime in your life, during the course of a week, of those 168 hours, God says, stop, slow down. I want to get your attention. Now, let's be clear. God is not anti-work, right? He invented work. It's not a sin to work. But when it entered the world, sin, we made it all about work. And some of us don't know how to stop working. There was a phrase back in the day, I'd rather burn out than rust out. I don't think either is what God intended, right? There's something more there. And so we think that by working longer and harder, somehow that's going to benefit mankind. Yeah, work's fine, but it can be a god, it can become an idol. Here's some interesting historical perspective. When you study ancient civilizations, archaeologists tell us that the Jewish people were the first culture to start doing this idea of taking a day off a week. Interesting. Holy. Here's another, circle that in your Bible. It's time to connect with God. And each of these feasts in Leviticus 23, all of them, all 7 of them, had a Sabbath component. Eugene Peterson, who wrote The Message, said this way: Sabbath is that uncluttered time and space in which we can distance ourselves from our own activities enough to see what God is doing. So, there's this 6-day creation rest one day, a 6-to-1 ratio model we see both in Genesis and it's repeated here in Exodus. So what does that mean? So he modeled it in creation, but he modeled it not because he's worn out, tired, and needs a break from doing his work. He models it because he's giving us an example to follow. That's a key distinction here. God doesn't need rest. We are the ones who need the rest, but he models as an example to follow. And so some of you are sleep deprived, and I know that for some of you, you're just not getting much sleep. You have a baby or you've got chronic pain or you're just nervous and anxious about stuff. But the bottom line is rest is part of the rhythm of life. 2 books that have influenced me greatly. I spent a year and a half with a small group reading this book, Practicing the Way, Be with Jesus, Become Like Him, and Do As He Did by John Mark Comer. Have any else read any John Mark Comer stuff? Raise your hand. Anybody? Oh, this could be your next small group book. Ironically, his parents were the Bible Hour speakers at Forest Home this past week, so it was very fun to get to know the parents of the guy who writes this. But one that you would really, this might be a little too, Twilight Zone-y, but An Unhurried Life, Following Jesus' Rhythms of Work and Rest by Alan Fadling, a prophet, Biola. Great, 2 great books. And so, by the way, if you want the first book that John Mark Comer wrote, it's called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And that's a fabulous, fabulous book. And so that's the model. He rests because he models it. Andy Crouch said it this way: but on the 7th day, God stops not only to bless, but to hallow or set apart the Sabbath. The holiness of God is revealed not just in what he does, but how he rests. And then it's always good in a sermon to quote an old, white, dead church father, right? Well, maybe he's not white. I don't know what ethnicity, but he's old and he's now dead. All right, thou made us for thyself, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee. Augustine of Hippo, or Augustine. All right, so there you go, whichever way we say it. Now, so what did Jesus say about Sabbath? Because you say, is this a New Testament concept? I think he does say something about it. I'm going to give you 4 principles that Jesus says about this rhythm of rest. Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Mark 2:27. Famous quote. And it's highlight that the purpose of Sabbath is to benefit humanity, not the other way around. Who kind of got that kind of cart before the horse? Kind of messed that up a bit, do you think? Anybody, any group of people? Yeah, the Pharisees made a whole bunch of other rules about what you could do or not do on the Sabbath, how far you could travel from your home, whether you could cook or not, all those things. And I think the interesting thing is they kind of ruined it for us, right? Because we get bound up in this legalistic thing. Anybody been to Israel and ever been there on the Sabbath? Anybody? I have. And if you have, you know what is called a Shabbat elevator. It stops at all 17 floors. And if you're on the 14th floor, you're not going down quickly. You could get down quicker just going down the stairwell, because it stops at every floor without needing to press a button, because that would be work, right? Some of you don't even know this. On your ovens, if it's an older oven, there is a Shabbat setting, so that it goes on low heat on Friday nights at 6, and so you don't have to turn it on to, quote, work to cook your meal on Saturday. And so I think the bottom line is, some of you say, oh, great, this is one more thing I got to do that I'm flunking, right? See, God provided this. It's a chance to rest, to reflect, to worship, to relax. I don't want to swamp you with another rule or a regulation. I'm just saying, could this be good for our soul, for our families, for our churches? You say, as a pastor, is your Sabbath on Sunday? Not so much, to be honest with you. I've tried to practice Sabbath on a different day of the week. Usually it was a Monday for years. Then we had kids, and it was a Friday, and then so we've kind of moved it around. Sometimes I just try to shoot for 4 hours of Sabbath, and that's not sleeping time. 4 hours where I'm quiet, unconnected, disconnected, unplugged. All those words I didn't have to even think about 30 years ago, but now with the tension of that beeping phone, which I've turned it off and it's behind me. If something goes loud over there, I don't know. I have the right setting. It should be quiet over there. So I just thought one more thing. So just let's just do this together. Inhale. So we're just saying it's not one more thing that you're flunking. It's just something I'm suggesting for us to consider. Here's what Chuck Swindoll said. In place of our exhaustion and spiritual fatigue, he will give us rest. All he asks is that we come to him, that we spend a while thinking about him, meditating on him, talking to him, listening in silence, occupying ourselves with him totally and thoroughly lost in the hiding place of his presence. I think you're halfway there if church is part of your Sabbath experience, by the way. I think for a lot of you, this could be the first half of your Sabbath is what we do together in community. Then it's what you do with the afternoon. And I have some friends that they've started practicing fasting, And it starts Saturday night at 6 and ends on Sunday night at 6. And so they have a communal meal with their family as they break their fast. But from noon or 11 till 6, no distractions, unplugged, no checking emails, no work. They really try to make the afternoon a time. And by the way, that's when they incorporate an hour nap. I like that plan. B, he is the Lord of the Sabbath. Look at Mark 28. He was the Lord, implying he had authority over it. He could interpret it, and he quite literally made a few changes. In fact, he kind of contradicted the religious leaders of his day. He told his boys, the disciples, his posse, hey, pick some grain. You're hungry. It's okay. So thirdly, he essentially says some work on the Sabbath is permissible. He thought, and we believe, that it's good to do good on the Sabbath. It's a good thing to do. In fact, and maybe he's poking the bear a bit, but did you know that 7 of the miracles Jesus performs is on the Sabbath? I think, if I'm honest, he did it without sin. If I was poking the bear, it would be with sin. See, I told you. Yeah, I'm not Jesus. I'm not even Jesus. And so you are with it this morning. This is very good. I am very encouraged. Or you just have a twisted sense of humor. All right. So 7 miracles, including the healing of Peter's mother-in-law, the guy with the withered hand, the crippled woman, the blind guy, and the healing at the pool of Bethesda, just to name a few. Lynn Bob says it this way: the Sabbath helps us know experientially that nothing we do will make God love us more. And that's so important. We're not doing this just to get, tokens for our eternal, raffle in heaven. I think Jesus goes beyond being a rule bender. I think he was a rule breaker, because he kind of turns all those regulations the Pharisee had added to the concept of Sabbath and says, not so much. All right? Fourthly, and this is pretty obvious, he rebuked the Pharisees' really strict interpretations. They were just too strict. They were legalistic. And he saw that you created all this extra burden for people, and that's not what my God the Father wants for us. By the way, I don't know a pastor that wants to create more burdens for you. And you may misinterpret times, hey, you got to be in a small group, or you got to serve, or you got to give, or all these are practices that help us grow in community. But I think sometimes we unintentionally burden people with our stuff that's important to us. I'm speaking for me as a pastor. And so I guess the question is, how do you know if this practice of this rhythm of rest is for you? Well, I think I created a little inventory. It's called THIN. If these things are present in your life, then maybe you should be practicing Sabbath. When I was a youth pastor back in the day when I didn't have gray hair, and I was an Angel fan at the time. By the way, the Angels are my second favorite team, right? And if the Dodgers Angels play, I'm just kind of stuck. But I cheer for the Angels all the time, just not against the Dodgers. But when I was a youth pastor, we would recruit volunteers who were fat, not PHAT, FAT, faithful, available, and teachable. And so the opposite of fat is thin, and this is when you know you need a rhythm of rest in your life. First of all, it's tired. Look at Matthew 11:28-30. Then Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are" what? "Weary, and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." When I pause, you say the word, all right? That's our game. "Take my yoke upon you and let me teach you, because I am" what? "Humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." Tired, worn out, fatigued. Like I said, you're maybe sleep training a 3-year-old. You're working 60-hour weeks. You stayed up all night. You're cramming for finals. You just finished one more all-nighter with the youth group. or maybe you have sleep apnea. I have experienced or done all of those in my life. And chronic fatigue syndrome is a real thing. It's crazy to think back now, but 35 years ago, I was diagnosed with sleep apnea. That's why you could be talking to me and I'd fall asleep. That's narcolepsy. That wasn't quite that bad, but I was chronically sleep deprived. In 1992, I went on 3 mission trips back to back to back. Brazil, Mexico, and Russia. And I came back, I'm in my mid-30s, I'm going, something's wrong with me. I should not be this tired. And I went and did a sleep study, and sure enough, they woke me up in the middle of the study and said, hey, congratulations, mister. Like I had won something. Hey, congratulations, we found that you have a moderate to severe case of sleep apnea. And today and tonight only, you too can get on a CPAP machine. Would you like to try it now? Sure. So they hooked me up to this little machine, and I slept for 4 hours, and I thought I'd slept for 4 days. It was unbelievable. It was so embarrassing. This happened 3 times in that era before I got diagnosed. One time this is early, I probably had this since I'm my 20s. So I lived with this for 15 years. I'm at Talbot Seminary, and I'm in the afternoon Bible class, and I'm taking notes, and it wasn't the professor. He was great. His name was Dr. Roscup. And I've got my hand kind of like this, and I'm taking notes, and I fall asleep. And the only reason I woke up is someone kicked me, and I looked down, and there's a drool puddle. And the ink has smeared my syllabus, and Dr. Roscup was gracious and never said anything, and I was so embarrassed. Okay, now there's a new pastor in Huntington Beach. We're in our very, very first prayer meeting with the staff and the elders. And I fall asleep. And I start snoring. The very first meeting with this pastor and the elders. I am so embarrassed. All right, that's never going to happen. It happens again. At my church in Agoura Hills, you say, yeah, maybe the machine's not working. Yeah, you're right. I fell asleep a lot. And so if you are chronically sleep deprived, I get it. Maybe you can relate to this. There are 200 million Americans. This is a little old. 85 million are over 65, 76 million are under 21. That leaves only 38 million to do the work. But 5 million are overseas working in the armed services, and that leaves only 32 million to do the work. But 15 million people work for the government, and that leaves only 11 million to do the work. 10 million are in school, and that leaves only 1 million to work. But any given day, there are 750,000 who are disabled or sick, and that leaves only 250,000 people to do the work. Last week, there were 249,998 people in jail, and that leaves only 2 people to do the work. And since you don't do much, no wonder I'm tired. H, hurried. As Jesus and the disciples continued on their way to Jerusalem, they came to a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. And her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come and help me. But the Lord said to her, oh, my dear Martha, you are so worried and upset over all the details. There's only one thing worth being concerned about, and Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. All right, busyness is not synonymous with godliness, but I also want to remind us that someone does have to make the dinner, right? It's easy for us, like, wow, you're so... I used to kind of get down on Martha, then I realized, well, I didn't see any of the boys lifting their finger to cook the dinner. Disciples were just hanging out. Mary's like, hey, I'm hanging with the boys because I don't want to do this. That's a little generous misapplication, I think. But the bottom line is there will always be urgency in your life to do something else that replaces time alone with Jesus. If in your quiet time you find you can't sit still long enough because there's just all this bombarding of things, then maybe you're a little bit of Martha too. There's a little Martha in all of us. Here's the principle. Busyness is not synonymous with godliness, and don't confuse activity with accomplishment. Don't confuse activity with accomplishment. So I was a youth pastor, as you know, most of my life, and then I was a family pastor, and then I was a senior pastor, then I was an interim pastor, then now I'm pastor to seasoned adults. Do you like that? Seasoned. How many of you would classify yourself as a seasoned adult? All right. So in my group in Redondo Beach, there's 75 of them. And by the way, we have 60 high school kids and 75 seniors. It's the weirdest mix of any church I've ever been at. We're young and old. We're salt and light. We're gray and black hair, And so how many of you are in your 50s? Raise your hand. All right? You're in my group. You're freshmen. Where are those of you in your 60s? Raise your hand. All right? You're sophomores. Where are you if you're in your 70s? Raise your hand. All right, upperclassmen. You're the juniors. Where are the people in their 80s? Raise your hand. All right, our seniors about to graduate. Not to heaven, but just graduate. And then anybody in their 90s in the room here? Anybody in their 90s? That's right. They have their choice. They can be anywhere they want. All right? They're in grad school. And so I think when I was a high school pastor, I became the family pastor, and the high school pastor came up to me one day and said, "Can we meet?" I said, "Sure." "Can we meet in your office?" "Okay." Then he said, "Do you mind if I shut the door?" I went, "Oh boy. This is not going to go well." Normally, it's the other way around. "Could you come to my office? Could you shut the door?" Right? That kind of, you've ever been called into the principal's office. So I felt like I'm in the principal's office. And he goes, "What happened to you?" I went, "Tell me more." Right? That's when you don't know what to say, you always say, "Tell me more." Right? He said, "When you recruited me, you were so much fun, and you were up at that camp, and you said it'd be great working here at Grace Church, blah, 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 blah." And we talked about lion, otter, beaver, golden retriever, and you're an otter and a lion, or on the disc, that was a high I, high D. He goes, "What happened to the otter?" And he said the words that pierced my heart. He says, "You're no fun anymore. You just want to get stuff done." Now, I could have been super defensive. I could have said, "Well, I got 35 pastors I'm managing, and that's a complex deal." And the Lord said, "Listen longer. Don't say anything." So I said, "Yeah, I think you're right." He had a big exhale, and he said, "I just wasn't sure you saw it." "Well, I didn't see it that way until you brought it up, but that's not who I want to be. I don't have to be Captain Fun all the time, but I got to be kind and nice and generous and thoughtful." And I was so driven in this mega church that had so many deadlines, I had forgotten the fundamental principle of ministry, and that is people are more important than programs. And it took a 20-something-year-old high school guy to remind me of what was truly important. And I like to say from that day forward, I never erred in that direction again. But it's been a hallmark of my ministry that if the people that work with me and for me and around me feel stress and pressure because the way I'm leading, then I'm fundamentally not leading a way that's like Jesus. And so that's what I've tried to do. It's caused me to get a tremendous amount of gray hair to do it right, but I try. And so maybe some of you find that. You're managing a bunch of people. You've got a horrendous schedule. You've got a task list a mile long. But maybe sometimes that causes you to just not quite live out, and your hurried lifestyle leads you to be the third thing, and that's insensitive. Is your heart enlarging today? Not in a negative physical way, but do you have a full heart, a heart that expands so that you have time to handle the unexpected? Someone that you see as a flat tire on the side of the road, but you're always too busy. there was that study done by the professor in New York, famous study about, they were studying the Good Samaritan, right? And they said they were doing some field testing, and you know the drill. They told them that you're going to go preach on this. And on their way, they set up a guy that was hurting and homeless on the way to the preaching lab, and they did a study on who would stop and who wouldn't stop, and it was quite revealing. Are we a little insensitive? So here's how I know I'm insensitive. I'm going to suggest for those of you, again, I do this every year. Where are the firstborns? All right, get your cameras out and just take 3 pictures, and you'll get, because it's not in your notes, you'll get the pictures, all right? Babies of the family, where are you? I've told a couple stories. That was just for you. Middleborns, again, where are you? Well, who cares about you? All right. I've done that joke 5 years in a row, and thank you for laughing again. I'm on at 11. All right. Here's when I'm insensitive. A short wick, I'm impatient or easily angered. When I have unrealistic expectations of those I work with. When I exasperate my kids or grandkids. All right? Here's another 3. When I don't read the room. When I'm talking too much and not listening enough. When I attempt to solve a problem instead of just listen. When I jump to a conclusion without hearing the whole story. And then the last set, over-involvement in good things that aren't always God things. When I find in my soul that I'm striving, and when I'm clueless and unaware of my wife's needs. You say, how often are you clueless and unaware of your wife's needs? Well, you should ask her. Well, where is she? Well, she's not here. I said, well, why is she not here? Because I want to say and confess in front of you, but she could be here anyway, that I'm more clueless than I'm willing to admit. He says, no, honey, you're pretty good. Well, how good? Well, not that good, but you're pretty good. Actually, I'm preparing this sermon a few weeks ago. She comes knocking on the door, and normally it's just for my life, my whole 47 years of marriage as of this coming August 5th. She's always got the first priority. You knock, I listen. And she knocked on the door. She said, can I talk to you for a second? I said, honey, I gotta get this in the PowerPoint. She goes, no, I got to talk to you about something. I said, honey, can it wait? I mean, I'll be done here in like an hour, and then she said, okay. You know what? There's a difference in okay and the okay. You know it, men. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And as soon as she said, okay, I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I realized I had messed up. She never interrupts me, and there must have been something important to talk about, and it was. And I repented. I asked her forgiveness. I said, this is how I want to treat you. You are the love of my life. And yet I was going to use quiet time as my legalistic excuse for why she could wait. That's wrong, man. I was just flat out wrong. Some of you don't realize that this is just a little over a year, and I should have been thinking about this, where she had been diagnosed with uterine cancer and had gone through radiation. I, of all people, I got to talk to you, should have had my antennas up. And I fumbled on the goal line, literally. So I confess that to you. I've asked her forgiveness. But that's, to me, the penultimate example of insensitivity. 4th, negative. By the way, she's cancer-free, 18 months out. Apparently you're not for 5 years, but so far the scans are coming in clean and clear. Number 4, negative. Now, I'm going to give you the 3 C's of negativity. I'm not negative. No, you're just cranky. And that, quite frankly, is one of them. Crankiness. Actually, it's the 3rd one. The first one is criticism, right? You're just a critical person. I pray none of you, I feel bad if some of you, your name is Karen because it's become a meme now. I mean, it's horrible. Tell me there's no Karens in this room. Well, there might be Karens, but it may not be your name, right? There are, by the way, what's the male counterpart? That's a Kevin or a Ken. Pick any other name, but Karen. Do you have a critical spirit? Do you believe the worst or assume the worst instead of believing the best? Complainers. Philippians 2:14, do everything not out of complaining or arguing or mumbling or disputing, complaints. Things are never good enough for you. You're living out the children of Israel's constant cranky complaining, and that leads us to the third one, crankiness. James 5, be patient, establish your hearts. Do you kind of wake up? Some of you, I think maybe that's part of your DNA. You know, crankiness is a chromosomal problem, and you'd like to say, I have no control over it. I just woke up cranky. I've been cranky since I was born. You have to be old to remember this. Remember grumpy old men with Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau? You might be them. By the way, this is the problem for those of you in your 30s. There are great movies that were done well before you were born. You should check them out. For some of you, this is your prayer. I want to thank you, Lord, for being so close to me so far this day. With your help, I haven't been impatient, lost my temper, and been grumpy, judgmental, or envious of anyone else. But I will be getting out of bed in a minute, and I think I'll really need your help. Amen. All right, let's land this plane. There are some helpful hints. How do you practice Sabbath without this being legalistic? I put a whole list on it. If you're watching online, I think this will come up for you. The first helpful hint is pick a day of the week. It might not be a Sunday. Find some Sabbath time. And by the way, I would say it doesn't even have to be a whole day. Start somewhere. Start with an hour. Graduate to 2 hours. Maybe you can do a half day. But find a rhythm of rest. There's a regular appeal to that. Then a second principle is eat a good meal. Ecclesiastes 3:13, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. Now, I can't prove it, but I'm pretty sure God is a foodie. Amen. Look at all the reference to food in the Bible. You say, oh yeah, you've apparently been enjoying the food. I'm telling you, going to Forest Home is like going on a cruise. 3 meals a day, and they were good. This is not camp food. Where were they when I was going eating cold hot dogs and some disgusting vegetable that I couldn't even name? It's changed. It's been awesome. God's a foodie. God loves food. Let me tell you I did a little study of this. He sets a table for us in Psalm 23:5. He puts me at his banquet table, Psalm 2:4. He's preparing the marriage supper of the Lamb, Revelations 19:6-9. And he's the bread of life and the living water in John 7. That's just a few of the references to food and sustenance in the Bible. Thirdly, this is the one you've been waiting for. This is the one you're starring. You say, I'm going to apply this one for sure. Take a nap. Take a nap and learn to rest. In vain you rise up early and stay up late, toiling for food to eat, for he grants sleep to those he loves. Psalm 127:2. Now there's a theological question I don't have time so if I'm not sleeping, does he not love me? That's not what it's saying, but I don't have time to explain it. All right. During the French Revolution, radicals abolished Sunday as a day of rest, but they had to reinstate it because it wasn't working. Russian communists, on the theory that they had created a new man, instituted a much talked about 10-day work week, which failed miserably. There's a rhythm that we need to rest. One of the most godly things that you could do is go take a nap right after this. Go home, eat a good meal, take a nap, and you've done 2 out of my list. You could win today. You could have a win. Pastor, I applied your message. I ate a good meal and I took a nap. Number 4, do things that give you joy, things that are fun. Here's what I like. I like going on a leisurely, keyword leisurely walk with my wife where we hold hands. That means when I go uphill and it becomes a cardio experience, it's not so leisure and it's not so fun. But I don't want it too far downhill because then it hurts my knees. I'm very high maintenance. It needs to be on a flat area. And I figured out there's a 35-minute flat walk we can do that doesn't stress me out. Just got to work for it. You'll find it, all right? So do things that give you fun. I like going to Dodger games. I watch family movies. Teaching my grandkids a new card game at Forest Home was hilarious. It's called Sweep. Even an 8-year-old can play it, maybe even a 4-year-old. I like reading John Grisham books, right? Legal thrillers. Any other John Grisham fans? I've got all of them, so if we want to trade books, we can share, all right? Because I wait till you buy it, and then I'll just use yours and give it back. All right. Ecclesiastes 3:4, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance. Number 5, avoid physical and mental labor. No yard work. Just don't reorganize your closet. Shop a different day. Work will late. Don't schedule that Zoom call. You don't have to. Number 6, consider turning off every cell phone, tablet, computer. Do not disturb settings. Just turn them off. When we had international students, we took their phones at night, and they went to Apple Village to go to bed. All the phones were plugged in one place, hidden in our closet. No, it wasn't quite, because they would stay up studying and use their phone. Number 7, make time for an extended quiet time. Time to discuss the sermon, to talk about what you learned in God's Word this week. Include your kids. It reminds them what's really important. By the way, the best part of Forest Home were 3 meals with my grandkids for 7 days, 21 meals until the middle of the week. Then the older one said, "Can we hang with our friends?" It was the first rejection as a grandpa, that my 12-year-old would rather hang with his friends he met at camp than with me. So I bribed him with chocolate chip shakes. But then I had to deal with if you didn't finish your vegetables from their parents. It was a very tough decision, but I took it and made sure they ate their vegetables, and I still spoiled them. Read a good Christian book. Listen to a podcast. Just not binge watching the latest, Lincoln Lawyer or whatever you're currently watching. And then it's a holy convocation. I think we do Sabbath in community. Do it with your small group. Be accountable to one another. In your men's group, in your women's Bible studies, be accountable. Corey's going to come up and... Did I call you Corey? It is Corey. I just had a senior moment. Yeah, come on up, Bill. My name's Corey. Come up, Corey, and start playing here. Oh, my goodness gracious. This is why Pastor Jared's so much better for you, right? He's got the gray hair, but he still has his mind. This is good. Oh, my goodness. I want to read to you. So bow your heads, close your eyes. I just want you to think about what I'm about to say as they play. Slow me down, Lord. Slow me down, Lord. Ease the pounding of my heart by the quieting of my mind. Steady my hurried pace with a vision of the eternal reach of time. Teach me the art of taking minute vacations, of slowing down to look at a flower, to chat with a friend, to pat a dog, to smile at a child, to read a few lines from a good book. Slow me down, Lord, and inspire me to send my roots deep into the soil of life's enduring values, that I may grow toward my greater destiny. Remind me each day that the race is not always to the swift, that there is more to life than increasing its speed. Let me look upward to the towering oak and know that it grew great and it grew strong because it grew slowly and well. Lord, that's our prayer today. And with our heads bowed and our eyes closed, I just want to ask you, maybe this has struck a little closer to home than you had hoped. You thought maybe you could escape today, say, well, this doesn't apply to me. If you're sitting here today and you realize that maybe you need to incorporate a rhythm of rest, some kind of Sabbath application in your own life on a more regular basis, would you just look at me? Just look me in the eye. Yeah, me too. I can't tell you. It's easy to preach about. It's hard to put into practice. Yeah, me too. Anybody else? Yeah. Well, Lord, help us to incorporate this, not as a legalistic gotta have to, not a woulda, shoulda, coulda, because it's good for us. You want our best. And maybe incorporating Sabbath will not only help us be closer to you, but be better to the people we love the most. Help us not to just be hearers of the word today, but be doers. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.